what will things look like at a mass level when people realize that ending aging is imminent? So before the treatments become widely available, what will the media look like? People's money changing, government policies, things like that. What will things look like in the immediate aftermath of people realizing it's imminent?
Yeah. So, the reason why that's the more interesting question is because, at least the way I'm seeing it right now, there's going to be a period of about 10 years, if not more, between those two events. In other words, the global widespread realization that aging is coming to an end will happen when we are still some way away from actually delivering all of this to the general public. And 10 years is a fairly long time, which means that by the time the therapies are actually ready for prime time and start to be distributed, all of the really complicated, turbulent stuff will have kind of shaken down, and I think everyone's going to be kind of ready. So, so what I think is going to happen, basically, is, and I think this is probably going to happen within the next 5 years from now, that results in the laboratories of scientists around the world, and also to some extent in the clinic, in terms of the early stages of rolling certain therapies out for humans, these things will progress to a sufficient point that most of my colleagues within the biology of aging community will start to say things that sound a bit like what I already say about how, this is a tractable problem and it's only a matter of time before we bring aging under medical control. We are just beginning to see the first shoots of that already. Probably the best example is David Sinclair, who has always been one of the more courageous people in terms of his public statements about aging and his intolerance of bullshit, shall we say?
Yeah.
And he wrote a book only 18 months ago, which was called something like "Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to," which is like more or less what I did a decade earlier. And that's not because he's more cowardly than me. It's because he has the disadvantage of being a professor at Harvard and, having to worry about where his next grant application is going, and also, of course, these days worrying about investor sentiment. So he has to be a fair bit more cautious than I need to be in terms of what he says. But things are moving so fast in laboratories around the world, as here's everyone else's, that it's becoming possible to say things like that and get away with it. And of course, I'm pretty prominent myself, but I'm just one person. And so when I go out and say these things and nobody else is saying them, the opinion formers of the world, the Oprah Winfreys and so on, they listen to the center of gravity of publicly stated expert opinion. And I'm not that. But I will be fairly soon because of the advances that are going on. And essentially, what's going to happen is that people like Oprah Winfrey are going to be the catalyst, just as they are for everything else. The opinion formers around the world will start saying, well, look, people are saying it's only a matter of time, so let's try and make it a little less time and save some lives. And like the following day, it will be impossible to get elected unless you have a manifesto commitment to, to have a war on aging. And of course, the economic arguments are also people are actually going to start listening to the economic arguments that have been made by myself and my colleagues for a long time now, to the effect that, the sooner we actually bring aging under control, the more prosperous we're going to be. So that's when there's going to be an enormous amount of turbulence. And the turbulence is not going to be helped by the fact that people are going to be taken by surprise. So, I get a chance to speak at conferences with, pension funds and insurance companies and so on. And the talks I tend to give to groups like that are called things like anticipating the anticipation. In other words, basically I'm saying, listen, what's going to happen is there's going to be this extremely sudden step change in people's expectation of how long they're going to live. Literally, it's going to go almost overnight from almost everybody in the world expecting to live only slightly longer than their parents did to most people in the world expecting to live vastly longer and in a healthy state. And that is going to have an enormous impact on what kind of life insurance package they're going to want. And health insurance and inheritance arrangements and, everything you can imagine, the big ticket items that drive the global economy. And the financial institutions are just not going to be ready because they have had their heads in the sand listening to the actuaries telling them about the historical trends of life expectancy and, just extending those trend lines, which of course gives the completely wrong answer. So, unless they actually wake up and anticipate the anticipation. In other words, they actually develop, potential products that will satisfy the new reality that will dawn so suddenly. They're going to go bankrupt. And some people are beginning to listen. But my fear is that only a small minority of such people will have listened enough to have actually done anything by the time that this tipping point actually occurs, only a few years from now.
Yeah, so you think that shift in science communication where more scientists will feel more comfortable or get the balls to start talking about this type of stuff publicly, you think that will happen sometime within the next 5 years?
I do, yes. I mean, remember, we're talking about a very small number of people here. There's a maximum of like a dozen of us who are, acknowledged experts on the biology of aging, and we do a lot of public interface. A lot of interviews, a lot of talks to the general public. Very few of us, and we're all good friends. We know each other well. We know each other's views well. So, I'm pretty sure, in my estimation, of what it's going to take to get those people to come and say the kinds of things that I already say.